Remember those Thursday nights? Gathered around the TV, just waiting to see who was going to get voted off Survivor or who would snag that final rose on The Bachelor. Good times, right? But have you ever actually stopped to think about how all that reality TV, even with all the guilty pleasure stuff, has kind of shaped how we see the world?
Yeah, it's true. Reality TV doesn't always get the best reputation, but I think you're right. It gives us this really fascinating look into our culture's anxieties and all the things we want, and even how we understand things like love and success and even anger.
And that is exactly what we're diving into today. We're going to be looking at how reality TV is kind of like a distorted mirror,
Yeah.
reflecting back these kind of twisted versions of reality. And to help us figure out this whole fun house of ideas, I've got expert speaker with me today. They're amazing at breaking down these really complicated media trends.
I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a really interesting deep dive.
So everyone listening, buckle up. Let's get started with this whole idea of the rage machine. How the media, and especially reality TV, can actually make us more angry and scared.
It's almost like we're programmed for conflict. Like if you think about those Roman gladiatorial games,
Mm.
thousands of people cheering as gladiators are literally fighting to the death. Yeah, it was brutal, but it also gave people a way to let out all that societal tension. And I think, in a way, reality TV taps into that same, basic human need for conflict and release.
Okay, that's a pretty intense comparison, but I think I get what you mean. We're drawn to drama,
Mm.
the clashing personalities, the thrill of not knowing what's going to happen.
Exactly. And with the 24/7 news cycle now, with its never-ending stream of crazy stories, well, it just makes it all so much worse. Do you remember all that anxiety surrounding Y2K back in the late 90s, all the fear that computers were going to crash and the world would just fall apart?
Oh yeah, I remember stocking up on canned food like it was the end of the world.
And it's not just a coincidence that Survivor, which is all about survival and, cutthroat competition, that it premiered right around that time. It totally played on all that cultural anxiety that was already there and made it into primetime entertainment.
Wow, it's like they took all our fears and anxieties and turned it into a TV show.
Hmm.
And in doing our research for this deep dive, we found some seriously messed up examples of how this can play out. There was one article about Jetia Hart. She is a nuclear engineer on Survivor, and she felt like the producers were manipulating her, you know, like portraying her as this angry black woman just to get people riled up and cause
It
drama.
really shows you the power dynamics. The producers in reality TV, they often look for those big personalities knowing that conflict is bound to happen. And sometimes they'll even edit the footage in a certain way to create storylines that they already have in mind, even if it means exploiting the people who are on the show.
It's like some kind of social experiment, but with real people and real-life consequences.
That's a really good point. The sources we looked at also talk about the Milgram and Stanford prison experiments. They were super controversial and for good reason, but they showed how easily people can be influenced by authority figures and what happens when you put people in groups. And I think in a way, reality TV is like a similar situation where they put people under a lot of pressure and push them to their limits. And that makes them act in ways they probably wouldn't normally.
So if the producers are basically like puppet masters, manipulating things to create the most drama, then where does that leave us? The viewers, I mean.
That is the big question. Are we all just sitting here watching all this manufactured drama for fun? Or are we actually part of the problem, fueling this whole rage machine? It's definitely something to think about as we keep looking at reality TV and how it affects what we think is real. It's
Yeah.
kind of wild how reality TV messes with how we see the American dream, too. It's like they're holding up this funhouse mirror to something that's super important to us as a culture.
Oh, totally. Work hard, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, achieve success and the good life. It's a really powerful idea, but it's also one that's changed a lot over time, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. The American dream wasn't the same during westward expansion as it was, say, during the post-war boom or the civil rights movement. Every generation kind of redefines it,
And reality TV has showcased those different versions, right?
for sure. Like The Apprentice.
Yeah.
Right. Donald Trump, he was already like the symbol of wealth and power. And then he goes and presents this version of the American dream that's all about being a business genius and crushing your competition. And honestly, a lot of self-promotion.
And that image that he carefully created, well, helped him become president. It's kind of crazy to think about that.
Yeah, it totally blurred the lines between what's real and what's just performance. Trump used being on reality TV to make people think he was super successful, which worked for him, even if it was like a super staged, exaggerated version of things.
And then you've got the Kardashians, who are like a totally different version of the American dream, building this empire from branding themselves, being on camera all the time, and this super perfect image of wealth and glam.
Yeah, it's like the American dream, but for the age of social media. They figured out how to make money off their whole lives. They're like a brand now. People want to be like them, but for most of us, it's just not realistic.
But does that kind of manufactured success, does it help or hurt us in the end? Does it inspire us to go after our own goals, or does it make us feel like we don't measure up?
That's the big question, isn't it? On the one hand, it can be motivating to see people building their own things and creating opportunities, but then again, it sets up these expectations that are impossible for most people, especially when you think about how most Americans are actually living. It's just not as glamorous as all that.
Yeah, it's true. The gap between the super rich and everyone else is getting bigger, and it's harder and harder for people to move up in the world. But reality TV keeps showing us these stories where people get rich quick, and that could be super misleading.
And that's what's kind of dangerous about it. When we start believing that anyone can just become rich and famous, we forget about all the real problems like inequality and all the stuff that makes it hard for people to get ahead. It's like we're being fed this fantasy while the real world is struggling right outside the TV screen.
It's like that saying, don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. And that's what reality TV is, right? A highlight reel. They don't show us the hard work, the failures, or how the system is rigged against so many people.
Oh, exactly. We got to remember that reality TV is made to entertain us. It's carefully put together to grab our attention and keep us watching. It might show us a little bit about society, but we got to stay critical and remember that it's not always real life.
It's like a good reminder that we got to be smart about what we watch, especially when it comes to something as popular and influential as reality TV.
Now, if we move on to love and relationships, we see that reality TV has also tapped into our changing anxieties and what we want in this area. The whole dating app thing has totally changed how we look for love, and reality TV has been all over that, reflecting those trends and sometimes even taking them to extremes.
That's for sure. We went from like waiting for a phone call to swiping through a million profiles in like minutes. It's a whole different world.
And shows like F-Boy Island and Love Island are basically turning dating apps into games. You've got all these contestants competing against each other for love and attention, and it can get really intense and embarrassing for the people involved.
It's like we're watching some crazy social experiment in real time, you know? Like, how are people supposed to navigate dating when everything is about looks, first impressions, and playing the game instead of actually connecting with someone?
Yeah, and it's not just about the competition part of it either. These shows play into our fears of being catfished and ghosted and just getting lost in this sea of endless choices. Like holding up a mirror to how tough and vulnerable it can be to put yourself out there in the modern dating world.
I feel like we've just gotten so used to it all, you know? All these crazy fights and over-the-top emotions, it's like we just shrug and say, well, it's just reality TV.
And that's part of what's wrong with it. When we watch all this exaggerated stuff all the time, it starts to change what we think is normal, you know, like what's okay to do and even what love is supposed to be.
It's like they're training us to expect drama and conflict in our own relationships, which isn't exactly healthy.
Right. And it's not just about romantic relationships either. Reality TV is always showing this cutthroat competition at work, with friends, even within families. It's like everyone's always trying to be on top, get attention, or be like the most of something, the most successful, the most good looking, the most outrageous.
It's exhausting, honestly. And it makes you think, are we all just putting on a show in our own lives? Like performing for everyone else, even if they aren't really watching?
That's a really interesting question. It reminds me of The Truman Show. Remember that movie? Jim Carrey's character spends his whole life on this giant TV set, and he has no idea that he's the star of a reality show. It's a pretty creepy look at how powerful the media is and how easily we accept things that aren't even real.
Yeah, I remember that scene where he finally figures it out and sails away to find something real, something genuine. It gives you hope, but it's also kind of scary.
It makes you wonder, right? Are we all living in our own version of The Truman Show? Surrounded by stories that someone made up and realities that have been messed with? It's definitely something to think about, especially with how crazy the media landscape is these days.
So what are we supposed to do? Throw out our TVs and phones and like disappear into the woods?
Not necessarily. I mean, all kinds of media can be good, right? It could inform us, connect us, and even help create change in the world. But we have to be smart about it. Question what we see and hear, and remember that even though reality TV is fun to watch, it's also a business. They want to get our attention, make us feel something strong, and at the end of the day, make money.
So we have to be aware of the refraction,
Yeah.
you know, like how things get distorted when reality is shown to us as entertainment.
Exactly. We have to think critically and realize that reality TV isn't always a true picture of the real world. It's exaggerated, edited, and often manipulated to keep us watching.
Well, we've definitely covered a lot today. From the rage machine to the American dream to figuring out love in the age of algorithms. It's been wild looking at how reality TV acts like this funhouse mirror, you know, reflecting back all our anxieties and aspirations and how our culture is changing.
It's been a really great discussion. I hope this has encouraged everyone to really think about the media they're taking in and how it might be shaping their view of the world.
And remember, this is just one deep dive into a whole ocean of ideas. We'll be back next week with another really interesting discussion, so make sure to subscribe and come along with us for the next adventure. Until then, keep those critical thinking skills sharp.